Hi, my name's Chris, and this is my second video about adult children of alcoholics. I want to first apologize because the lighting in here is not that great. I also want to apologize because I will be reading from a script that I created to kind of time manage. My last video was really long. I want to keep this one pretty brief. So in my original first video, I did talk to you about what it means to be an adult child of an alcoholic. I gave you the laundry list of traits that basically describe us to the T. I'm currently reading this book, which is called Adult Children of Alcoholics, and it's the expanded version, as you could see, which basically means that a little bit more development was done after its original publication in the 80s. And it's also by Dr. Janet Woititz. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but Dr. Janet basically was the first person to really start taking a look at the relationship between children and alcoholism and how it affects the family, specifically the child. Uh, Originally, she was just gathering stories from people she knew. She says this book isn't really about clinical research, it's just about hearing those people that have dealt with this kind of alcoholism, this specific kind of relationship that children develop with their alcoholic parents and families. On the back, she even has, "Are you an adult child of an alcoholic?" And gives the original list of ACoA, as we are known, traits that describe adult children of alcoholics. It's a slightly different list. You'll see that the original list is not quite the same as the one that I gave you in the last video, which is the list that they basically use for the adult children of alcoholic meetings, which are similar to AA meetings or Al-Anon meetings. So moving on, the first trait that she talks about in regards to adult children of alcoholics is this one. Okay, so adult children of alcoholics guess at what normal is. The reason for this is pretty simple. As a child, you have a lot of instability in your life and inconsistency, and you can't determine what's normal because you have not experienced it when you were young. You were told contradictory information from your alcoholic parent, such as, "I love you, go away," or "You're the best child," to then turn around and say, "I wouldn't drink so much if you weren't such a lousy child." And these contradictions build up in our minds. And while we thought we knew what was right to feel and to think about those situations, we were told that everything was fine and that there was nothing to worry about. Because, despite being told this by the non-alcoholic family members who were supposedly more responsible than the alcoholics themselves, we worried anyway, and we learned not to trust them, but also continued to learn not to trust our own feelings. We were also taught to not talk about some things, these things subconsciously or maybe even literally, and these mixed feelings left us confused because we were just keeping them in without the chance to really talk about our situations. We only find out later that these situations and our family life were not normal when we first go to school and are exposed to other people who don't have the same lifestyle as we do. In her book, she mentions these things, and I'll go on a little bit in a second, but I just wanted to make this point. I did not actually do any of this highlighting. I did buy this book on Amazon.com. It came used and already highlighted, but I wanted to let you know that it's clear that the person that read this book prior to me was an adult child of an alcoholic. And I can tell you that I know that pretty much like 99% for sure, because every highlighted passage is something that an adult child of an alcoholic would find very emotional. And that's something emotionally overwhelming. And that's something that Dr. Janet mentions as we read these novels. It feels to us as if we're reading our own diary. We ask, how can you know these things about me, not having been in my position or experienced my things? And it's because, again, that's why these traits are so interesting. They do connect us, and it's a further point to tell how well these traits define us. So let me just go ahead and read some of this book, this first paragraph. So, adult children of alcoholics guess at what normal is. The significance of this statement cannot be overestimated, as it is their most profound characteristic. Adult children of alcoholics simply have no experience with what is normal. Many of them join Al-Anon or AA. I often am amused at what happens when they reach the second step. The second step is, quote, "came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity." They absolutely believe that. It's certainly true. It's certainly significant and important and essential to recovery. However, they don't know what sanity is. They look at things that appear to be normal and try to copy them. yet what they are copying may or may not be normal, and so they're behaving as if they're normal without having a sound basis for making that decision. Um, the author goes on to make this really interesting comparison of how being an ACoA is similar to being a closeted queer person, in that the analogy is in that a queer person doesn't know what it means to be normally queer because they're not surrounded by that 24/7. And therefore, because they don't have a basis of comparison when they're growing up, um, they don't know what it means to be a normal queer person. And so I could see her point that she's trying to make, but I think the analogy is a little weak, specifically because I know what it means to be a queer person. And I think it seems that the queer community tend to have less shame, especially with all these new developments politically, about being queer or related to being queer than comes with the ACoA identity. I feel that the ACoA community holds a little bit more shame. And this is proven by her words on the next page, where she says, they get concerned and confused about things that they believe other people do not get concerned and confused about. They don't have the freedom to ask, so they never know for sure. And even more important, they don't want to look stupid. And I think that's kind of the difference, is that being a queer person, you don't really have to ask a lot of questions per se. I mean, maybe you do, maybe your experience was different. But I don't think that you feel stupid being queer. Maybe you feel like there's something that's out of your control, but I don't think you feel stupid. I think the shame comes with feeling stupid or feeling like something is your fault when it comes to ACoA. So personally for me, being an ACoA is actually more shameful, and it's harder for me to accept and really talk about than being a queer person. So I'm just going to read a little bit more here. So it becomes very clear that you have no frame of reference for what it is like to be in a normal household. You have no frame of reference what it is okay to say and to feel. In a more typical situation, one does not have to walk on eggs all the time. I think this is hilarious because I'm pretty sure the phrase is eggshells, but I don't know. I'm an ACoA, so I don't really know what's normal, right? One doesn't have to question or repress one's feelings all the time, and because you did, you also became confused. And then she moves on a little bit to talk about how this confusion and the internal conflict that you have really actually starts messing with you, because not only has your experience with your family been very inconsistent and somewhat tumultuous, but she goes on to talk about how living in a fantasy world is sometimes a way to cope. And I agree with this, and I really strongly identify with it. When I was younger, I had such an imagination. It would allow me to escape the atrocities of what I was dealing with on a daily basis. And as I grew, especially as I grew older, I needed to cope with the past issues that I had dealt with my father. So I originally had this fantasy, which is very normal for adult children of alcoholics to have as a child. The original fantasy is thinking about how things would be better if I just left or if I didn't exist. And again, playing on that whole like low self-esteem kind of concept. And then as I grew older, I kind of feel that to be a little bit more of a creative aspect of myself. So I became more creative, and I felt that as my childhood was sort of delayed, I began to use my imagination and my creativity later. So I did play with a lot of toys and built a lot of characters for myself and for my toys as I grew older, which isn't as normal as, per se, you know, when you're younger, you would probably do that and then grow out of it. But I grew into it. And my brother and I connected with this because he was younger. And I feel that wanting to live in a fantasy world has definitely carried over into my adult life. And let me tell you how. Because in the book, she does mention an example of how somebody takes something from their childhood and carries it over to adulthood. So I don't know how often, very often, I imagine myself with someone in an intimate relationship, and it's never going to be like that in reality. But I daydream anyway about the happiness and the freedom that comes with that relationship. Many times I'm let down by that person or the relationship, how it works out, the reality of the situation, that these people are not going to be what I want them to be, and that's just because I wish it to be so. People don't change like that or come perfect like that. So I've set myself up for disappointment because they're not mind readers. And just because I wish it to be so doesn't mean it's going to be so. I often think that sometimes there are parts of my fantasies about my past partners that could turn into reality, but I also don't know how to get those things to happen because I wasn't given the resources to create a consistently satisfying relationship based on my past experiences with my family. Let me just go ahead and read a little bit more. Let's see here. Although, oh wait, that's not what I want to read. Actually, I think that's it. So those were the quotes that I wanted to read. Everything in the book I wanted to read. I highly recommend that you go out and you start recognizing this. You start recognizing these aspects of not really knowing what normal is and accepting that. And something that the author talks about is that's very often possible and plausible that we take a look at celebrities and TV shows and movies to really focus our normalcy on these, fake realities, and just try to fantasize what it's like to be in a normal relationship or a normal family based on what you see in movies or on TV. So my biggest thing is just recognize it, be really aware of it. I found that I very much don't know what normal is now that I've started noticing it. And I think that you should just go ahead and start Googling around for answers and trying to figure out, what you can do to really start focusing your efforts on that. Personally, as a, kind of a joke, it's kind of funny because I just said Googling for answers. Something that I do, and I will admit this as an example of not knowing what normal is that if I have a fight with somebody or if I need some information, to make a decision about an argument or to make up my mind on, what should I purchase at the store or something like that. But usually it's going to be a little bit more of a personal, like argument kind of thing. I will go and Google answers. I will literally look up what other people have said because I know somebody out there has had experience similar to mine. Maybe it's like, do I get back together with my boyfriend after he broke up with me because he cheated on me, or we broke up because he cheated on me? Something like that. I don't know the answer to because I don't have the resources to deal with those kinds of emotional situations. I don't have the resources to really know what's normal and how should somebody treat me, and in what ways should I get back together with somebody, or in what ways would it be best to get back together with somebody or not? What are the pros and cons of that? All those kinds of things that are really hard life choices and decisions to make anyway are even further complicated by the fact that I just haven't had any normal relationships growing up, I don't think. So just go out there and experience what you can and try to notice it. And my next video, I'll talk about another trait, and I hope this was very helpful for you.